Hey, welcome to Meet the Professional, which is being delivered today by the University of Manchester. I'm going to start today's webinar by introducing some of my colleagues who are going to be working behind the scenes. I'll first introduce myself. My name's Penny Gordon-Lanes. I'm one of the career consultants at the University of Manchester, and I particularly work with the Faculty of Science and Engineering. So I'm just going to hand over to Miriam, if that's okay.
Hi, I'm Miriam, and I work in alumni relations, specifically with the Faculty of Science and Engineering. And I work on events like this, engaging our alumni who come to in a variety of different ways to speak to our students and give them careers advice and help improve their employability.
Thank you. Helen, next, please.
Hi everyone. So I'm Helen Frost. I'm a careers consultant, the same as Penny, for the Faculty of Science and Engineering. I specifically support the School of MACE, so Mechanical, Aerospace and Civil Engineering, also Materials and Maths. So I'll be here answering questions on the question panel, so please feel free to ask away.
Wonderful. Thank you, Helen. Julie?
Hello everyone, I'm Julie and I may be familiar to some of you. I look after placements and employability in EEE.
Thank you, Julie. Lizzie?
Hi everyone, I'm Lizzie. I'm the Student Experience Officer both in Chemical Engineering and in EEE.
Wonderful. So this is the team that's going to be working behind the scenes. I'm just going to go through some housekeeping. So I'll just ask my colleagues just to turn off their cameras now. Now that you've met the team. In terms of GoToWebinar, you'll hopefully see a toolbar, and within that toolbar there is a tab called Questions. So within this section there is the function for you to ask questions. You can submit questions using this part of the toolbar. So Helen, Julie and Lizzie, they'll be picking up those responses and getting them across to Miriam and I if they are questions for the panel. So if you want to find out a bit more about their kind of career paths or things that they did whilst they were at university or things they've been doing, you know, since being in the world of work or advice that you're seeking, please submit your questions through the questions tab. I'm just going to ask that you don't use chat on this occasion because Miriam and I will be using that in order to manage the questions. Just to make you aware, today's session is recorded, so it will be available on the Career Service YouTube channel in the next day or two. So if you want to review, you know, any of the comments that the alumni have shared, please feel free to look at that. And also, if there are any peers that perhaps you think might benefit from watching today, please signpost them to the Career Service website. We have got some slides to share with you, but before we get into those, I'd really like to invite back our alumni, our panel for today. So if you would all be kind enough just to pop your cameras on where you can and your audio. Now we have got a couple of alumni today who unfortunately can't access their webcams, so they are there and we'll be able to hear them. And what I've got are some slides there so that at least you know, so you can put a face to a name if you like. So I think that's the 4 of the 6 that have got cameras. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to hand over to Miriam so she can do some sort of introductions and take it from there.
Hi everybody. First of all, I'd just like to say thank you very much to the volunteers who are giving up their time to come and speak to us today. So thank you very much, everybody. And yes, again, don't forget that both Jenny and Neo are here, they just don't have their cameras on. Can I ask the alumni now to introduce themselves, starting with Murat?
Okay, hi everybody. I am Murat Islam. I'm a mechanical design engineer working in research and development at the moment. I am from Turkey and I did my bachelor's mechanical engineering degree in Turkey. I came over here with a scholarship from the Turkish government to do a mechanical engineering design master's at the University of Manchester. And I loved that program. It was really great. And I continued to the PhD level of the same subject. But I had to quit the PhD and go into the industry. I work for John Crane at the minute as a couplings design engineer, and in the past I worked for Airbus wing manufacturing in Broughton. I worked for a couple of subsea cable protection manufacturing companies as a design engineer. I've done various internships and things in my studies as well, and I did a lot of hospitality work while I was studying at the same time. So on top of this, I probably did a project management certificate with Robert Gordon University as an online distance learning program. So I'm quite keen to sort of do CPD and improve my knowledge as well. So that's pretty much me. Thank you.
Thank you, Murat. Aishwarya, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Aishwarya and I graduated from Manchester in 2018. So I did biomaterial science and tissue engineering while at uni. And when I was in uni, I was really confused about what I wanted to do. So I remember that for a long time, I thought that I wanted to get into research. So during the summer holidays, I would do, research internships, work in labs, that sort of thing. And I realized during those internships that I really don't like research. I find it very boring. So I took a little of a detour. And then after graduation, I started working in a technology company called ARM, which is where I currently work. And at ARM, I've done a few different roles. At the moment, I work in change management. Basically, my team at ARM, we look at the things that can be improved in the company in terms of processes or the software that we use or the way the teams are organized. And we try to make things more efficient. That's what I'm doing at the moment.
Thank you, Aishwarya. Jenny, could you introduce yourself?
Yes, hello everybody. I'm Jenny Harrison and I am a principal engineer at ACOM, based in the Altrincham office, although everybody's working from home at the minute. I graduated from University of Manchester with MEng in civil engineering way back in 2009. And I've worked for ACOM ever since. I've worked on some interesting projects in the Manchester area, such as Manchester Metrolink, some of the extensions, and some of the smart motorways projects, which can be a bit controversial. I just wanted to say that civil engineering is a very varied career. It can take you on lots of different paths, and it'd be good to get some questions later on.
Thank you, Jenny. Neo, could you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Neo. I graduated from the University of Manchester in 2016 in chemical engineering. Throughout my dissertation, I realized, because I did wastewater treatment, that this is probably not the path I want to go down. So I started looking at different career opportunities, and that's how I landed in my graduate role at the Hut Group, which is an e-commerce business, one of the biggest in the UK that's privately owned. I started off in the brand of MyProtein, and I, realized that the analytical side of engineering was something that I loved. So I applied that knowledge into coming up with commercial strategies and e-commerce strategies for the business. Quickly, that scaled up from me doing the emerging markets to the UK brand, which is £100 million in turnover. So I was in charge of that for about a year. Then I changed into commercial data analytics projects. And then in March 2020, I left the Hut Group to go to Uber. And I was there for 3 months until COVID-19 happened and they did the layoffs. And then I got my job back at THG, which is where I currently am at now. So yeah, the main thing I want to stress is when you're doing engineering, that analytical skill set you have is a very powerful weapon, and you can definitely apply it to very, very different types of problems in businesses. And I'm open to answering any questions about that.
Thank you, Neo. Sofian, could you introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Sofian. I studied mechatronic engineering and I graduated in 2016 as Neo. Starting and finishing uni, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I kind of just followed the path of getting onto a graduate scheme. But through my last year project, I realized that I developed the skills that I needed to make something that was useful. So I started flirting with the idea of building a startup, and this is where I bumped into one of my old friends from uni, which I've known since first year, named Alex. He studied business, and together we started a company. We decided that we wanted to get into a growing technology, so we took 3D printing. And in the process, I personally learned to design and bring those designs to reality using 3D printing. And with the robotics and electronic skills that I had from uni, it really added to the dimension of things that I could build. Alex, from a business background, learned to design and code through it. And that's essentially how we got our aha moment. And we realized this is how students need to learn about technology, by actually making things and making useful things. So this is really when we started Dicey Tech as it is now. And our mission is to create learning experiences for students. We take projects from industries and we use open source electronics and 3D printing to bring them to reality and teach kids how to learn how to design, code, and print. And they also get to explore different careers and get a clear idea of what they want to do in the future. At the same time, I did start a graduate scheme at Thales, which I pursued for a year and a half before going into part-time to spend more time on the startup. And since January 2018, I've been working full-time on the startup. What we are now is that we had a huge workshop planned, sponsored by big companies in the rail industry, Avanti West Coast, Alstom, Network Rail, and the resulting project was going to be this showcase at the Museum of Science and Industry. Because of COVID-19, all of this work has been postponed, but we've also launched our online learning platform where school and students and individuals can get on and learn how to design, code, and print, essentially. So if you're passionate about education and you want to make a change, feel free to reach out.
Thank you, Sofian. Niran, could you introduce yourself?
Yep, sure. My name is Niran. I graduated in 2017 from the University of Manchester with a Master's in Aerospace Engineering. I'm currently a lifecycle engineer in Rolls-Royce, looking after the Trent 1000 and the Trent 7000. So those of you who know about aircraft, this powers the Boeing 787 Dreamliner and the Airbus A330neo. My career in Rolls-Royce started off with a summer internship working on turbine blades. I then returned in 2017 for the graduate scheme. Throughout the graduate scheme, I tried various different roles. Started off with linear friction welding, moved on to a systems design role, and then moved on finally to a customer-facing role in the Europe, Middle East, and Africa customer team before moving on to my current role. So I've had a taste for different areas in the business. If you have any questions regarding aerospace or aviation, I'd be happy to take them. Yeah, that's me.
Thank you very much. Okay, so the first question from me, what is a typical working day in your role like, if you have a typical working day? Under normal circumstances, possibly. I know that at the moment, your working day may not reflect normality.
Who should start?
Yep, Murat, that would be great, thank you.
Okay, the normal working day at the minute is obviously geared up around social distancing and correct health and safety measures in the workplace. So we obviously, most of us working from home, and they managed to just leave a core team to support the daily life in the workplace. There are probably about 10 people at the same time in the facility at the minute. But I'm working from home with my laptop, all my simulation capabilities, all my remote access to network drives and everything else, as if I am at work. So there is literally, for me, there is no difference being at home or being at work. So only thing I am missing out is the physical tests I should be running. And I did order a few stuff and they are delivered, and I need to go and pick them up and assemble them. So for that reason, I have to go into work and be present. But the normal daily life in a normal situation is you get into the office, you chit chat with people, have your coffee, you sit down at your desk and you start getting on with your emails first of all, quickly skim through them if there is anything important that you want to deal with. Once you ironed out the important ones, unimportant ones can wait. Just get on with your normal project work, which may be quite critical for business, that may support some customer requests. So we deal with various things, from product testing to product development, performance analysis, simulation, modeling, talking to people from all over the world. Our company has manufacturing and sales sites across the globe. There are about, I think, 200 places or more, maybe even locations in the world. So I have to deal with a lot of people to organize the manufacturing and make sure the designs we are proposing are up to the job. And if there are any complaints or if there are something not clear, I have to explain them to the people. So yeah, we have a lot of meetings, we do a lot of presentations, and we also want to support the young generation, obviously, and attend sessions like this to do that. I also volunteer for the Institution of Mechanical Engineers. I did chair the Lancashire area panel. I'm part of the Northwest region as well, so I do social media in the Northwest region. So I am trying to figure out what else can I do to support the engineering industry, support the mechanical engineers, bring up the new engineers who are highly qualified, who knows how to do their stuff but be ethical and understand the business at the same time. I want to also promote the chartered engineer route or any professional engineering, professional registration schemes. I'm a chartered engineer, I'm very proud of it, and it did allow me to get better jobs than what was available to me before. So I would definitely recommend volunteering and getting chartered. That's pretty much it, I think. Okay.
Anyone else like to say anything?
Yeah, I can have a go. So for me, my role there's a reactive side to my role. So my usual day would start off by checking. We've got a 24/7 ops desk that covers our fleet 24/7. So if there are any issues that have happened overnight on our fleet, that's something we usually check every morning. If it's something we need to get involved and start an investigation on. Being in the aerospace industry, you have very strict guidelines to work to and regulations that are set by the authorities. So if there are any safety concerns that are highlighted, they have to be taken through appropriate processes. So we have the reactive side, which is what I've just described, but at the same time, we also do a lot of proactive work to see what we can do to help our customers keep their disruption down. I think most of us have been on a flight that's been delayed, and we're usually cussing and taking it out on the poor airline staff, but usually there's a technical reason behind that delay. So we want to minimize that as much as possible, and we try to be on that front foot and look at what we can do proactively. Do a lot of development testing. I'm based in Derby, which is our main site for Rolls-Royce. We have numerous engine test beds where we can run the engines to essentially try and replicate service conditions. So that it involves going and looking at a lot of hardware and trying to gain as much knowledge as possible. So it's a mix of office-based work, but at the same time, we get to see a lot of hardware as well.
Hi, I'm not sure if Miriam's got her audio there available. Aswara, do you want to pick that up? I saw you had your hand.
Yeah, sure. So I can talk a little bit about my day. So how it usually works when we're in the office is we have this short meeting every morning. It's called a daily Scrum. I think it's really popular in the technology world in general. So and what happens is everyone has a very quick to the point meeting where we go through all the different tasks we each have for the projects that we have, and that really helps us to know what everyone else in the team is doing, and then we can help each other out as well if needed. That's the first thing we usually do every morning. Now we're doing it virtually, of course. For us, our projects tend to be quite small, so something between 3 and 6 months, it's usually the norm. And that means that there's a lot going on a lot of the time. For example, one of the projects I'm working on at the moment is implementing Salesforce across the organization. So all the different commercial teams, sales, marketing, legal, all of those teams, now we're incorporating Salesforce. So they're all using one system and it's a lot more seamless. So what that project involves is, so we decide how we're going to, and we plan how we're going to roll it out. So we decide, okay, which teams start using it when, who starts using it. So we've got some trainers who in each team who train the rest of their teams. We've got our super users, the people we train in the beginning. We've got the end users. So we think about how we're going to do that. And we, of course, troubleshoot any issues that come up. And we also do the user acceptance testing in the beginning to make sure that the system was working well and it's compatible with what we do at ARM. So on a day-to-day basis, there's a lot of those different things going on. I don't think I can really describe a typical day because the kind of work that we do really does depending on what issues they have and so on. But I think that besides the work itself, there's other important aspects that we have in our daily schedules, things like coffee chats with our colleagues to see what else is happening in the company and to share knowledge. We also have lunch and learn sessions at work. That's really common. Just to understand more things about what's happening in the tech world as well and within the company. I think that's something that's really important, especially in a fast-paced industry, to know what's happening in the not just within the company, but also in the industry as a whole. Because if you're not keeping pace with the rest of the industry, you're just going to fall behind. That's kind of what I'd say a typical day looks like.
Thank you, Aishwarya. Has anybody else got anything they'd like to contribute?
I do, if that's okay.
Yeah, same.
Yes, thank you, Jenny.
I'll be quick. So, like the other people have said, one of the first things to do when you get into the office in the morning is to check your emails, and then generally I get stuck into project work. So when I started out in my career, I was doing quite a bit of a designing of roads and drainage systems. However, as I've progressed, I don't do so much of a designing. I've checked designs. I also do a bit of project management. So we just check, see how we're doing for deliverables, whether we're on schedule, how much money we've spent, how's everybody feeling on the project, do we need more people to work, that type of thing. I am in the office most of the time. However, I do go out to sites, so visiting construction sites to check on progress or to have meetings, and also to meet clients to discuss projects or maybe some potential new projects. That type of thing. We also have lunch and learns, which I think is a really good way of sharing knowledge and keeping up to date with the latest technologies. Even if we're not a technology company as such, there's lots of new software coming out, lots of different ways of working, and especially with what's going on now, I think it's really making people think of the opportunities and in different ways of working. So that's a typical day for me.
Thank you. Sofian, did you want to say something?
Yeah, so actually similar to Jenny, the typical day for me has changed very much since I started working compared to now. Initially, because the startup was at the very early stage, it was very focused on what's the next deadline, what do we need to get done this week, what do we need to get done in the next 3 weeks, whether it's for an event or whether it's something that we want to show to a client. It was very much driven by that, and therefore it's really hard to have a routine. But now that we have more people on the team, I need to actually dedicate some time to make sure that they're progressing in their work, that they have their own tasks, that they always have something to do. So I actually took the time to kind of draw out what's my ideal day, and similar to what everyone said, the first thing to do is just go through emails, respond to all the emails, and from there try to minimize any type of distraction. And usually I try to spend the first half of my day working on projects as content, so an educational project, and the rest of the day I will spend working on our online platform, so working on new features, deploying new features, and it's also part of an open source team. So I am also part of that team, and therefore there's work to do on that side of things too. But I definitely recommend trying to find a routine. It just really helps in making you productive. And the lockdown massively changed mine, so not being able to go to the office. But once I found one that I could do at home, it was much nicer.
Thank you. Neo, would you like to say anything?
Yep. So day to day for me is what the size of the hot group. Basically, any single decision that you make from a strategic perspective could be worth millions. So as a result, they don't like to do things based on feeling. They always want to have a data-driven insight associated with whatever they decide their strategic decision is. So it's my job to, paint the story, paint the picture in order to be able to drive these strategic decisions and be able to calculate risk versus reward, so we can always do anything that we decide to do from a calculated risk. So the nature of my problems can vary from a customer-centric problem like what's the opportunity cost related to sales because a given product is either out of stock or discontinued, for us to figure out, okay, do we have product attribution across different products on the basis of this product is now out of stock? Do customers migrate and we still get the money, or do they go to a competitor that's still selling the product? And then it's my job to figure out what is the likelihood of that happening, etc. Or from a warehouse perspective, what's the cost of having to split orders because we don't have the correct stock in all in one warehouse and it's across many different warehouses. So the problems vary in terms of the data I'm going to be pulling and the teams I'm working with, which means that there's a lot of project management skills needed in that aspect, as well as a lot of Python and predictive modeling and things like that to get the insight and wrangle data and clean it. So it involves like a multitude of skills, but it varies day to day because you never really know what the business problem is, but it's your job to prioritize it based on the analysis that you do and the commercial value associated with the project. So it's like basically engineering in the sense that you're always problem solving, but it's different because you're doing it from the perspective of a business, from a customer perspective, as opposed to like a power plant or something like that you typically have in chemical engineering.
Thank you. Penny, do you have any questions from the student audience?
Yes, I do. I just wanted to kind of just make an observation what everyone has said there. There is a high level or high expectation of adaptability there, isn't there, and flexibility. So you may have in your mind when you're on your way to work, I'm going to do this today and this is going to be, my particular project or piece of work, but having that ability to just adapt and change and to be able to respond quickly to those demands that are put upon you, I think it's an essential skill. Lots of our students need to think about ways how they can demonstrate that when they're at that interview or talking to employers. So I just wanted to highlight that because I think that's really important and a theme that occurred with all of the comments. One of the questions I do have here is it's actually targeted really with Jenny and Murat. So this is a question about your chartered status and how long did it take? So Jenny, could you let us know how long did it take you to become have that chartered status?
From graduation to actually sitting my review, it was around 6 years, which is quite a long. Well, some people do it in 4 years, but most people it's about 5 to 6, 7 years. It's, as Murat said before, it's definitely worth doing. No matter which professional institution you want to go for, it opens up new doors, new careers. And there's also that personal satisfaction of doing it. I would recommend anyone to do it.
That's great. Thank you, Jenny. And Murat?
I would say about the same, but thinking about it, I graduated in 2010 from my master's and I continued to a PhD degree. Then I went on to the industry. So I probably worked around 3 years after the PhD. Then I realized my project management skills needed improving to be able to get chartered. And for that reason, I actually did my certificate in project management, just to justify the chartership requirements. Because there are 5 competencies and it's all to do with competencies. How do you meet those competency requirements? It's nothing to do with what you do exactly in your job, but are you competent enough to justify that? So it can take some time to build up that experience, the track record, the project record, to actually just satisfy the interview panel. And I am now actually part of the panel who does the interviews as well. So I'm conducting those interviews as a co-panelist. I'm hoping to become the panel chair eventually. And if I work enough, maybe I will become a facilitator in the future. So I do have a plan of where I want to be in the future as well. But I would definitely recommend seeking a chartered engineer route, especially if you are considering doing a master's. For sure, you need to be chartered. You need to be chartered, I think.
Great, thank you for that both, Jenny and Murat. Miriam, over to you.
I have a question specifically for Neo, which is how did you market / sell your skills that you gained from engineering to an e-commerce company like the Hut Group?
So I had a natural interest in sports nutrition from my hobby of bodybuilding and just the gym in general. So that allowed me to create rapport with the CEO at the time, and then that put me into the business to begin with, and then related to the data aspect of selling myself, because I came from an engineering background. Naturally, I was always analytical in terms of the decision making, and then by being like that, I showed a different approach to problems. Whereas typically in the business, the typical graduate came from a marketing or pure business aspect, whereas I did chemical engineering with business management. So I was able to marry the data aspect to the business aspect. And it was that I used to sell myself in order to be able to get into commercial data analytics and more ingrained in terms of the e-commerce side rather than just the basic running of the business, but understanding all aspects of it and then getting involved in everything. So I hope that answers your question, but that's the way I did it personally.
Thank you. Penny, do you have any more questions?
Yes, this is from a student who's wanting to secure a placement year, an industrial placement. They're saying that they're not really quite sure what field they want to specialise in. So they're doing chemical engineering, and they're asking if any of the panel have advice about someone who wants to kind of try out a different sort of range of options, different variety of fields, in order to help them kind of narrow down those kind of wealth of options that are out there. So do any of the panel want to respond to that? Sophia?
Yes, well, similarly, when I was studying mechatronic, I applied for a placement in a purely software development role. And I think my recommendation is apply for the roles, go to the interviews, and go through the experience of taking those interviews. Because for me, doing that, and even as I got to the interview, the interviewer told me that they were surprised I applied to the role. They never really had a mechatronics student apply to that role. And it was great because I got to experience going through the interview process, the practical questions that were asked. I realized that, oh, this is very interesting, but I really don't like it. So it was very much, the role was very much favoring people that had the math degree or a strong math background. And I appreciated the fact that I came all this way so that I got to experience and I got to check off my box of, okay, this type of role, not really for me. So definitely in terms of applying to internship, I recommend apply for them. And even if you get one and you go through it and you don't necessarily like it, you will still have learned a lot along the way.
That's really great advice. Thanks for that, Sofiane. Does anyone else want to provide some advice to this student? Yeah, Murat?
I haven't done any industry placement myself, but from my internship experience, maybe that sort of classes as an industrial placement in a way. All I wanted to gain from that was the experience of talking to people. How do you work with people? So it really didn't matter what job I did at the time. It is just the appreciation of how people are actually working in the workplace. What language do they use? I was lucky to get a related internship actually. So I was learning mechanical engineering and manufacturing background things basically. So it was quite useful. So if you can find the right topic that you are really interested in and find a placement for it, that's the best thing ever really. You should really get into, go through the interview process for sure. And don't be upset when you don't get any feedback from the interviews either, because it's all part of the preparation itself actually teaches you a lot on the way. Even if you didn't do the job, you realize what this job really required in depth because you have to research it and you have to understand what the company is about. And doing that is a must do basically for any interview, and gaining that skill early on is very, very useful in the future for the right job you want to go for.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. Iswara?
Yeah, I'd have to echo what Murat and Sufyan have said. Thinking back about what my friends who did chemical engineering went on to do, I think there's a lot of different industries that they've entered. So for example, there's pharmaceutical, oil and gas, consulting, a huge range of different things that you can do with that degree. So I think that if you're trying to figure out what industry you want to get into, something you can think about is firstly your interests, and also talking to people who currently work in the industries can really give you a better understanding of what they do and if that would potentially interest you. So my recommendation would be to reach out to people, maybe Manchester alumni themselves, talk to people on LinkedIn, try to have some chats and try to figure out, if what they do is what you want to do in the future.
Thank you so much for that. That's really great advice. And for those of you who are watching, we do actually have a kind of a function called My Manchester Network. And that has over 500,000, I think, around alumni who have signed up to help our current students and graduates. So you can use that to reach out to other alumni to find out about their industries, how they kind of got to where they are. Jenny and Nia, I'm just conscious you haven't got your cameras on, but do either of you want to add anything to those comments?
I think it's a good opportunity. Any placement or any summer placement or any industrial placement can be a really good opportunity, even if it doesn't sound like your sort of thing. When you actually get there and you actually get stuck in, it might be what you want to do, or you might find out that you don't want to do something, which is fine. It's all good experience, and when you graduate at the end, you definitely don't want to do something. So it's all valuable. You can build up your network and just see what's out there, because I found work, what you do at work quite different to what I did on my degree. So it's all very valuable experience. It's all good.
That's great. Thank you, Jenny. Neo, do you want to add anything there at the end, or?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that if I had done a internship prior to my master's, I probably wouldn't have stayed with the master's in engineering, and I would have went into data analytics very, very early on. So I'd say that having an internship in place is definitely valuable in terms of strategic decisions related to your career.
That's great. Thank you so much for that. Sorry, Murat, I saw you popped your hand up there. Did you want to add something?
Yes, I was sort of gonna suggest that any experience you gain out of these are valuable. So when you go into a company as an industrial placement person, they don't think you are an outsider. They feel you are part of the company. Then you have the access to the whole company network. Then you get to know new people, you get to learn from them. You can ask them questions directly because you work for the same company in the same place. So it gives you a massive opportunity to explore other disciplines in the company. Rather than just thinking about your existing role, you can then talk to the people who work on the job and learn from them and see if you actually like their job. So this will give you even more opportunities. So try to get into a company somehow.
I think that's really interesting, actually. I know a lot of people that I've supported and worked with have found their kind of ideal job by working with other people outside their discipline on projects, sort of cross-area projects, and have actually found kind of career roles that they really enjoy but they hadn't set out to kind of pursue. So I think that's really good advice, Murat. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to hand over to Miriam now for another question.
Okay, the next question I've had is, for those of you who are international, how did you go about bettering your chances in the engineering industrial sector? Niran?
Yeah, so I think, so I know rules are changing soon, and you'll probably have to speak to your careers team about that. But back when I joined, it was still very much you needed a tier 2 sponsor, and there's only a certain list of tier 2 sponsors who can sponsor you a visa. So there are extra hoops you need to jump through. And it's all about making, a lot of companies, big companies don't really, think about you as an international student. They they're okay to sponsor you. It's more, do they want you as a professional? It's about making yourself stand out a bit, and it could be anything that makes you stand out. You know, and Murat's talked about any experience being good, and that's exactly what it's like for me when I went for my interview at Rolls-Royce and got feedback. One of the main things that stood out to them was the fact that through university I was doing a part-time job in a sports direct in Manchester, and you know, that's something I was purely doing just to earn a bit of money through university. I never once thought that it would actually help me get into my job after graduating. So it's small things like that that go a long way. Just being part of society, just to show that when you're at university, you know, you're balancing your university life, but at the same time, you're seeking other opportunities to develop and grow as well. I think that goes a long way. And when there are other aspects you need to think about as an international student. Like I said, you have to have a tier 2 sponsor. So reading up on that can really help you. Things are changing. I'm not quite familiar with the changes that are coming through, but your careers team will be good to advise on that.
Thank you, Nuran. Would anyone else who was an international student like to contribute anything? Murat, thank you.
I speak a bit too much, I think, but as an international student, I find exactly what Niran said. Doing any job, not just only improve your soft skills, but also language skills as well, because you want to get you want to be immersing in the culture of the country you want to work in. And working at a hospitality job for me was quite useful because I could get to talk to drunk people and try to understand their accents. And my English was nowhere near as good as it is now. It's been 10, 12 years now. So you can imagine when I first came here, I hardly spoke probably. And I had to work with people, try to improve my English and personal skills and try to understand the culture at the same time. So they all contributed to this. But once you go through that hoop, I obviously found a part-time, temporary job, engineering job in a small company, only doing a couple of hours a week maybe. But that sort of put me into the industry a little bit. I gained some experience from that. But then you start getting your normal job, then you think about how can I improve myself again? Then you start thinking about can I do something with the institutions available to us? Then IMechE comes into place. Institution of Mechanical Engineers, there's Institution of Engineering and Technology, Institution of Chemical Engineers, whatever degree you are studying, go to their network, find the people, and trust me, there are very highly skilled people volunteering in the same place that you would be volunteering with. So you can learn from them. They would become your mentors without you realizing. So you can discuss things with them, learn from them. They can even tell you about new opportunities. You can attend a lecture, technical lecture, which is free from most of the institutions anyway. You can learn things from the lectures. That may be an answer to a question in one of the interviews you will go through. So you never know. Every day you should think about what else can I do to improve myself. And that's CPD, continuous professional development. And you need to keep track of it. And you need to target certain things, set some dates, and achieve them. And once you achieve them and show the results, people realize, yes, this guy does what he says. I think that's an important thing.
Thank you. Aishwarya, did you put your hand up?
Yeah, I think I'd like to add to that and just say that as an international student, there are extra hurdles that you have to jump over. So I think that it's important to realize that it can be a bit of a numbers game. You know, you probably have to apply to more number of companies than maybe your friends who are from the UK. And I think that to a certain extent, you have to get used to rejection because that's going to be really important, the amount you persevere. And of course, make use of the career service that Manchester has to offer. I remember when I was a student, I attended, some CV sessions to improve my CV, did some mock interviews, things like that. The career consultants that we have seen so many international students get jobs, and they can help you as well. So I know that it's hard, but if you want a job in the UK and you're willing to work hard for it, I'm sure that you can get it.
Thank you very much. Sofyan.
So yeah, as everyone mentioned, in terms of sponsoring a tier 2 visa, one of the main challenges the size of the company. So it kind of reduces the pool of companies you can apply for. but lately the government has been putting in place some measures to, I think it was turning your student visa, extending it for 2 years, allowing you to work for the next 2 years. And it's one of the measures that they did to allow more companies like startup to be able to hire international students. So before Corona, I would have told you Manchester is very much a tech hub, and there's a lot of the tech community is growing, the startup scene is growing. So go around with people, and I think you can still do it through LinkedIn. Everyone is now on their laptop, so you can definitely get access to them. Looking at Manchester and using the Manchester University high profile to essentially connect with smaller startups or smaller companies, they'll be able to hire you in the current situation.
Thank you very much. Penny, do you have any more questions?
Yeah, I've got one here for all of the members of the panel, actually, and it's about your first kind of professional role after graduation. So what would you say were some of the biggest challenges that you had to overcome when you first started? Would it be possible to start with Jenny? Is that okay, Jenny?
Yes. My first professional role was a graduate engineer. And I suppose for me, the biggest challenge was what I'd learned at university. I don't know if the course is different now, but when I did civil engineering, it was quite structures focused. And I got a role as a highway engineer. So we hadn't really studied that much highway engineering as part of my degree. So there was a little bit of getting up to speed with sort of the technical side of things. But I'd probably say that was the most challenging. And it's just so different working in an office. If you've not worked in an office and doing 9 to 5, it can be quite different to how you might study at university. But I was very lucky. All my colleagues were lovely, and people were really keen to help you learn, because we're all part of a team at work. And you know, if someone's struggling, then we're all struggling. It's better to work together and try and achieve our goals as a team and get those deliverables out and get those drawings done, that type of thing.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Jenny. Neo?
Yeah, mainly the grind of a 9 to 5, but then at the same time, the grind of a 9 to 5, you probably end up working less hours than when you're, doing your dissertation and things like that. So it's just a different way of working. I think the main difference is you have to be more collaborative than usual, because you're not doing projects that are just your own, but you have to get several different people involved, and there's more project management in working than there is when you're doing a degree. I'd say is the main thing to get adjusted to, for me anyway.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks, Neo. Sofiane, how about you?
For me, it was, I guess, the key learning point I had going into a company is having to deal with a project in a difficult position. In uni, usually when you go through a project, if things don't really work out, you just think about how you could have done it better, write it down. You can make it sound really nice, and you can still get really good grades for it. But when you go into industry, if something doesn't work, you can't just move on from it. You have to actually deal with it, and you have to address it. And having to deal directly with clients is one thing also, announcing them by news. And I think once the first time I had to do that, it was very difficult. I barely slept the night before. But once you've done it once, you understand how to approach the situation, and you understand how to really communicate challenges to other people to get their buy-in. It's a very valuable skill to learn, but it's something that I don't know, at least I don't really know if you can learn it unless you actually go through it.
That's great. Thank you, Sofiane. And Niran?
Yeah, so my first role was a graduate role in linear friction welding, and I did 4 years of aerospace engineering. So I was like a fish out of water. I've never done anything manufacturing related, and this is quite a complex manufacturing process. And I think what I soon realized is that you learn so much on the job that you really shouldn't think that You know, I need to know everything before I go into this company. Yes, I spent 4 years studying aerospace and you graduate with a master's, but there's so much you learn on the job, no matter what kind of job it is. And you just need to be open to that. I know a few of the panelists already touched on, speaking to colleagues, just trying to absorb that information. I think your learning really doesn't stop, when you get that degree certificate. I'd say you learn a lot more on the job than you do at university. Yes, university is the basics, but I think just, be open to learning on the job and be open to not knowing when you first go in, and just know that it's okay.
That's really great advice. It can be very overwhelming, can't it, when you first join a new company and a new team, and you feel, that very sort of your knowledge isn't quite as good as it could be, and it's kind of realizing that, isn't it, and almost saying, yeah, that's okay. And as long as you're asking questions and you're willing to learn and you're open to that, it's really important. So thank you so much for that, Niran. Aishwarya, how about you?
So I think for me, something I found very different and challenging when I first started working was the lack of structure that my work life had. What I mean by that is that, until that point, even if it's about going to uni, I knew that, okay, this is going to end in 4 years' time, and then I'm going to do something else. There was that kind of plan already in place. But when I started working, that was the first time that I didn't have an endpoint, an end date in mind. And I found that very hard to navigate. So I remember struggling to think long term while focusing on the job and learning and trying to do the job well, but at the same time trying to think about what I want to end up as, or the position I want to be in 10 years time, and how I can get there. So that was a bit of a challenge. Something else I found a bit difficult was speaking up as the most junior person in the room, or the person with the least amount of knowledge. I remember feeling very intimidated sometimes, but the advice I got from my manager at that time was just to ask a lot of questions and to just put my thoughts out there, because of course the reason they've hired me is because they want to hear what I have to say, right? So that was good advice.
That's great, thank you so much. And Murat?
My very first job was almost like a very bad job anyway, but it made me realize that when I sign things off, it actually impacts people's lives. So it was actually residential gas pipeline project engineer I was. So I was actually deciding what size pipe would you need to transmit this pipe from the source to your gas hubs or radiators or whatever the lines you have in the system. So it sort of made me realize when I put my signature at the end of that report, it actually means something serious. So whatever I do from there on, I thought I need to do justice. And if I'm not sure about something, I ask the question rather than signing it off. So I think that was a mind changer for me, that I realized, okay, something you submit may not be good enough, but it will be okay for people. But in the real job, it can affect lives. So as an engineer, you need to think about these things. The other jobs, obviously, when I moved on from there, it is sort of understanding that the fact that you don't have to know everything like other people said, and you learn a lot more on your own, never mind the company. When you need to do something, you dig out, you search, you do your research, you go to YouTube, you go to Wikipedia, you get the basics, and then you go deep into books, you do proper research, and you learn what you need to know on your own. That's how you take a company forward. You can't just use what they have to make a company better. You have to find something outside to make it even better. So that's what engineers do, I think.
That's great. Thank you so much, Murat. Miriam, I'll hand over to you. We've probably got time for one more question before we finish off today, so I'll let you take that.
Okay, one moment. There are quite a few questions left. So after this final question, if any of the students would like to approach the alumni on LinkedIn, they'll all be very willing to connect with you and be approached if we haven't had a chance to get around to your question. Okay, so speaking of contacting people on LinkedIn, which might be one of the examples as an answer to this question, one person has asked, are there any opportunities to find mentors within the companies to guide us in the right direction along our career paths? And if so, how would you approach such individuals? Does anyone have any experience of being mentored by anybody and have any advice Murat.
I also investigated the mentorship program for our company. So you very firstly understand what you really want from a mentor. I think that's the most important thing. Mentorship works if you know what you want to achieve. So you need to have an end goal to be mentored on. So it is not important about, you can use anybody to learn from, but unless you want to achieve something very specific, there is no need for a mentor really, because you end up losing the relationship. The relationship doesn't work. So you first set out what you want to achieve. And if that is to get a new job, different job, then find a relevant person and ask their advice. And that advice has to be sort of a regular communication, back and forth and discussions and completing some tasks, going back at the board again and discuss how we progressed and get to that target. That's how the mentorship really works. But apart from that, using LinkedIn, I approached many people and asked for opinions. It is not exactly mentorship, but I've asked for guidance. And there are many, many people in the world that are more than happy to help you. Really, there are a lot of people out there. Feel free to approach us. We will do our best, I'm sure, to guide you, direct you in the right direction, basically, for what you want to achieve. But first, decide, what do you really want to achieve? That's the most important thing.
Thank you, Sofyan.
Yeah, I think definitely echo what Murat said. Not everyone needs a mentor, and we really need to understand that a mentor is kind of a career accelerator. Is you know where you want to go, and you try and find someone who's in that position or who's been in that position that you can then exchange to. And I would add also that just remember that in the mentorship relation, in the mentor-mentee relationship, it's a two-way relationship. So the mentor is also looking for a way to push himself, and you asking him questions, challenging his knowledge is also something that he looks for. So don't just think that it's the one-way street where you're just taking from the mentor. He's also looking to him teaching you or mentoring you is a way for him to learn also. So you can also bring something to your mentor, and you should not hesitate to bring that forward when you're looking for a mentor.
Thank you, Sofyan. Would anyone else like to say anything? Jenny or Neo?
I never had a mentor, so I can't. I'm not sure if I can really answer that one. But as various panelists have said, please do reach out to us on LinkedIn. We're happy to help where we can.
Thank you very much, Jenny. Okay, I think it's time to bring the panel to a close. We've got 1 minute left. And so I'd just like to say thank you very much again to all of our panelists for giving up your time to come today. It's been fantastic. And to any students who haven't had their questions answered, please do. There's been quite a few on there that are directed at specific panel members. So please do approach those panel members on LinkedIn. And if you haven't got a LinkedIn account, I highly recommend that you create one. Please do also, if you're on LinkedIn, connect with me and any of the other university staff that you've seen here today, because we often advertise opportunities and events like these on there. And thank you very much. Penny?
Yeah, just one final thing to say from me. The Career Service is here to support you. I know a couple of panel members have mentioned that they've used the Career Service themselves whilst at university. So if you head towards the Career Service webpage, all the details are on there about making appointments. We are offering Zoom, Skype appointments at the moment. So if you are at that stage where you think, yeah, I need to start thinking about my plan, what I'm going to do next, then please feel free to contact us. I'll just really quickly mention there is a handout, which is the slides that I've used today, so you can download those. Hopefully lots of you have done that already. But if you just want to take a quick some details of the panelists, you can find them on LinkedIn. I'll just allow another minute for that to take place.
Okay, thank you very much, panelists. Please do feel free to go whenever you would like to, and see you again soon, I hope.
Thank you very much
Thanks,
for organizing.
everybody.
Take care, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.